Hello and welcome to Flame On. I am Brian. I'm here with your Rainbow Spotlight series where we talk every week to a queer, allied, and all of the above person of interest, artist, writer, musician, drag performer. I mean, anything, whatever it is. I am so thrilled today because I've known this young man for many years now, being mutually similarly aged, mutually bearded, and Gandalfed, if you will, podcaster and writer. Let me introduce to you Flame On's one of our favorite podcasters from Bearded Fruit. It is Cody. Hey, Cody.
Hello.
I could try to say your last name. I'm going to get it right. Daigle-Orians.
That is correct. That does not always happen. Somebody gets one of the parts wrong all the time. Yeah.
So again, Cody is a writer, also a now video sensation on the TikToks and the YouTubes, as the dads call it.
Me and the kids over on TikTok.
But doing such a cool series, Ace Dad Advice. Did I get it right? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
I want to tell you that I have had a lot of conversations about what being ace is and asexuality and over the years, and I think I got it all wrong. And then I started watching your video series and I was like, okay, finally I'm getting it packaged in a way that I understand. You're speaking my language. You're such a great resource for anyone and everyone who might be ace or ace adjacent, because I know it's a spectrum, right?
Yes. Yeah, well, like, I mean, really, I for most of my adult life, I was getting it wrong too. I knew very little. I mean, I didn't come out as asexual until I was 42. So I'm in my asexual infancy in a lot of respects, but I look like this. So yeah, like a lot of what's sort of taking that information. This is me learning as well at the same time. Like I'm absorbing this information too and trying to make sense of it for my aged brain. And it just seems it's working really well over on in video world, over on TikTok and other places, resonating with a lot of like the young ones out there, which is really cool.
Well, and I liked your one of the videos you talk about how you kind of fell into a community of younger people, mostly on Tumblr, and sort of learned about asexuality and what it meant to be ace. And that was your moment, right? That was when you were like, oh, wait a second. So talk about like that process of finding that path or finding that identity.
Yeah. So that starts with marrying a millennial. That it begins there. Yeah. So Neil, my husband, is he's a little younger than I am. But yeah, he's was always on Tumblr, and I was always kind of checking out what he was doing. And I was like, oh, Tumblr, tell me about the Tumblr. And he's like, yeah, you should do it. Just play around, go explore on Tumblr. And so I did, and it was like a cool place to like read horror stuff, and it was a fun place to like find cool art stuff and queer theory stuff. And I was just on Tumblr and starting to read these posts from these youngins about asexuality and the identity and their experiences in the spectrum and all of the like asexual theory stuff. And I was like, oh, that's me. That's my experience. That all this whole time that I've not really like quite totally understood my whole life and experience, I'm reading myself in a Tumblr post. And that was, very fortuitous thing. And that was kind of like the beginning of me understanding that I'm an asexual dude.
Yeah. And an asexual dude in a loving relationship with a fabulous artist and educator, Neil.
Yes.
Daigle-Orians. And like that process, especially once you're in that relationship, like, I have been with people who have been either ace or maybe at that point in their life, demi, but gray. I think gray is another term, right? Gray sexual.
Yep.
And so, for relationships, sex is a huge part of most, not all. And so I know that process of finding an identity, but also having that time before when you were figuring it out together, that had to be challenging.
Yeah. Like, like in our, honestly, like coming out coming out for me was the thing that actually helped us get on a much better track in our relationship in that regard. Because before, there was just something off and we didn't know what it was. And I thought I was like broken and or just like randomly inadequate, and I sort of sucked as a sexual partner. And then Neil sometimes felt that it was that I wasn't into him or attracted to him anymore, and that like that was a problem. And we were both like deeply anxious and concerned about problems that actually didn't exist. It was this other thing. And so me coming out was really helpful. It articulated what was going on and gave a name to it that we could both understand. And it's like we actually have like we have a better sex life now than we did when it was still very confusing and uncertain, which that's pretty great.
Isn't it funny how communication will so many times enhance your sex life? Like, I feel like if I could write one thing down and pass on to everyone that things I've learned in my life, it's that more communication in and during and before and after sex is so critical. And just that, like what you said, is just because like the sexuality component isn't necessarily what you think it should be, based on society's expectations, based on the fact that the communities out there. Mostly it's society and culture. It's just like, no, you got to be having sex. It's amazing, like that's just not for everybody. And I think, again, listening to your video, watching your videos, and hearing you talk about it, it makes sense. Like, of course, it's not going to be for everybody. What do you think, like, in terms of like, we talk about bi erasure a lot, ace erasure. Like, I mean, clearly this is not a new phenomenon. What do you think about like, people in history and how they struggle with it? Like, have you kind of tried to go back and sort of find any like historical ace sort of stories to tell or inspirations, or is that is that something you've explored?
Yeah, I mean, like that's part of just my general nerdiness. Like, I want to know, I want to read all the books, and when I like the thing, that's what I want to do. And the thing that's really interesting to me, has been very interesting to me about asexuality, is that it's a very hypothetical history. Clearly, ace people have existed in the world for as long as there have been people, because that's how sexual identity works. But there really isn't. Like when you're looking at like the earliest moment when there's sort of like actually some doctor is speaking about asexuality, even sort of generally, it's not until like the 1890s. So there's this huge stretch of history where no one's talking about this at all, and it's only really ever seen as either like you're celibate, or you're maybe like that person is a prude, or they're just kind of weird and not like a normal human being. And then past that, you really don't have. It's not until the 70s that there's really any kind of real discourse about asexuality, and even in the 70s, it's discourse that's more framed as kind of like political and like taking on not having sex as a kind of political statement, or like a Lisa Orlando wrote a thing called the Asexual Manifesto, and it's sort of living your life and not having sex as kind of like a rejection of the patriarchy and as a feminist statement. So like in the 70s, there's asexuality, but it's framed differently than it is now. And like it really isn't even until the 2001, I think, is when AVEN, the Asexuality Visibility and Education Network, was created by David J. online. So it isn't until 2001 that there's even like a website that talks about what the experience is like and had places where people could connect. It's a very murky history where you're sort of guessing, like, that person seems ace, so maybe it's like coding people, they're coding historical people, and but there isn't a whole lot out there that's a concrete of a history in the same way that you have in the queer community.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense, because also, like, in the more gay and lesbian and sort of the closeted sort of anecdotes and experiences we've learned, you don't always know, even if they led like a confirmed bachelor lifestyle or whatever, what that actually meant in practice, unless you can find those primary sources and go, oh, well, no, they had a boyfriend that people just didn't talk about it. Or, oh, no, they actually didn't have, it wasn't Emily Dickinson famously, like without a partner, I believe.
Yeah.
And so who knows what she was doing? I mean, at the
Right.
time, maybe asexual, maybe lesbian, maybe we just have no idea. Right.
Yeah. And that's true for like so much of that time. And I, because the general assumption is that so allosexuality, like experiencing sexual attraction, is the human default. They just assume that is the default, and that person is just making a choice to live that way, as opposed to that being kind of who they are. And that's who's writing, though that perspective is what's writing the history. So, right. Yeah.
That's so cool that you're finding the roots of this and exploring this both for your own identity, but also to educate and share, because I mean, again, it's just been so overlooked, and it's so important to our community to understand this. I think both for people who are ace and gray, which I want to come back to that, but also people who are like, myself. What did you have a term that you threw out there for not ace? Did you have a
allosexual? Yeah,
allosexual.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's cool. I had never heard that term before. But like, so someone who's like myself, allosexual, I believe, like, to understand my drive and what motivates me in terms of sex and attraction. And I know, and again, the differences, right?
Yeah.
Like knowing about the asexual community and the gray sexual and all that, it helps inform about myself as well, my identity and sort of, underpinnings. I don't know. So, I mean, this is so interesting. And I'm so glad you're exploring it. I know the Ace Dad videos have been popping up in my TikTok feed and my YouTube feed, even before I knew, because I've known you for a while,
right.
But even before I knew that you were doing it. And I think that first time I was like, whoa, this is awesome. So like, talk about sort of finding the idea and then sort of like the response you've received, because from what I can tell from just looking at people's comments and on Twitter, like you're doing some great work, getting some really good responses.
Yeah. So like TikTok, my barber was on, it starts with my barber. So I'm in his chair and he's telling me like, oh man, I downloaded TikTok. It's awesome. I'm having a great time over there. And I was like, yeah, I mean, okay, cool. I'm a little too old for TikTok. I don't think that's really my place. That's Gen Z. I'm not going to TikTok. It's like, no, you really should give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. Download it, go. So I was like, all right, fine. I will bow to the pressure of the man who makes my hair look okay. And
which it looks great. So he should be commended.
Thank you. And so like, yeah, I downloaded TikTok and I'm goofing around with it. And it's a fun site. And in like trying to figure out all the tools and how it works, I made this one video. I was practicing stitching videos together because I had to learn the thing. And I made this one video that I stitched, and in it I identified myself as asexual. And like all of a sudden it totally explodes, and it's getting like views way beyond any of the other things that I've been doing. And I'm getting like this like massive slew of comments that are like, I didn't even know that ace adults existed. Like from kids saying like, I have never seen an ace person who was not like 17 or 20 or something like that. I've never seen an ace person who looks like you. I didn't know that you all existed, which I thought was the wildest thing. Is like, of course there are ace adults. We don't, you don't just disappear. But it's in large, it's because it's a community that, especially digitally, it's a young person space, and there are not a lot of faces like me playing around on TikTok and identifying as ace and engaging in those conversations. And because the digital space that asexuality exists in is like 2001, we aged out of a lot of those spaces. So the youth like voice really dominates the ace space. So I was like, oh, well, there's room in this community. Like these kids don't have elders, and there's no elders, which like I, as like a queer guy, I had elders in the queer community, which were incredibly important to me. Like queer elders and mentors when you're growing up mean a whole lot and are they define your experience and help you navigate the community. And I thought, well, like, it's crazy that these kids where are the Ace elders? Like, you need them. So, I like, as a fan of like my dad vibe, I was like, well, okay, well, I'm going to be, there's no Ace Dad in the community. They need one. So I'm going to be that guy. And it has been like it's honestly been like the coolest experience connecting with all of these young people who are trying to navigate a world that's really tough. And, they don't have people, they don't have Ace adults that they can go to and go like, my experience, can you help me navigate this? And I'm getting to do that, which is really rad. And also cool in that is I'm also connecting with a lot of other asexual people who came out much later in life like I did, people who came out in their 30s and their 40s, even older than I am, who are also getting a lot from this because they're like, oh, cool, I'm finding other people like me, which others late to the party, which is really, it's just been very cool.
I just love that you saw this need, like you saw this genuine need, and yet you also had this genuine representation that you wanted to bring, and just the two work together so well. And I love that you found that. With asexuality, I want to come back to this because this has always been a term that I think you actually maybe introduced me to when you've talked about this, but gray sexual versus ace proper is like gray sexual sort of one of the many levels of asexuality, or is it sort of a cousin to it? How does that all fit?
Yeah. So asexuality exists on a spectrum, and gray sexuality sort of lands in the middle. That's where I started as in my kind of, that's where I put myself first in the community. So asexuality as a whole means asexuality is people who do not experience or rarely experience sexual attraction. So that's the definition. Gray asexuality is sort of an in-between place. It's for folks who rarely experience, like sometimes they'll experience sexual attraction, but most of the time they don't. So it's living in that in-between space. And demisexuality is kind of closely related. For demisexual folks, they only experience sexual attraction when there's an emotional connection with someone. So they're in that rarely group too. So you go from people like as I've kind of better understood my own identity, I identify as asexual now. So like I don't experience sexual attraction ever, to people who do sometimes, and then people who fall in between. And then there are a bunch of micro labels under that too, because discourse likes to have labels. So they're also inside that there's a whole bunch of kind of like micro labels that you can, that drill down on what the experience is, so that you can really articulate, well, this is how I relate to sexual attraction and like the act of sex. Yeah. I
love that. And this isn't a uniquely Gen Z thing. However, I do appreciate that Gen Z and Gen Y, I think, paved the way for this. Maybe Gen X did a little bit, but I definitely feel like it's gotten more and more of being willing to like build an ontology around their different this and that. Because and to discuss it, because even if people had had these theories and thoughts in their heads in our formative years, they didn't discuss it as openly. And in the last generation, pretty much, like we're seeing that now just so common among younger communities, younger individuals. And that's really got to be helpful for everybody just to better understand it.
Yeah, and like what I think is really cool about what I'm observing with the way that they're using the micro labels and just the labels in general, like they're really using it as a way to form community. So it isn't just about self-definition. It becomes also about, well, if I use this word and others know it, then I can find my people that way, like really find my people. And that is like, that's beautiful.
It's
that's
everything.
Like a totally beautiful thing.
I love, like, so over the pandemic, finding, not that I mean, I've had Discord. So Discord's the community I'm talking about, or the platform, I should say. But finding communities on Discord has kind of become a thing for a lot of us, I think. But, over the last, 12 months, 14 months, gosh, however long it's been, because it was such a nice place to find those really niche groups of folks that are your tribe, right?
Yeah.
And I can only imagine with the Ace community and just various other, like that's Discord's got to play a huge role in that, and other online communities, of course, since Tumblr is, I don't even know what Tumblr's doing these days. I know it doesn't have as much porn as it used to. So I've been
It
told.
does not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
but
does
I
not.
mean, I hope that in addition, like these communities and these platforms allow these communities to exist. It's kind of the good news version of the internet, contrasting with the bad news as we get the QAnon and other weird.
Yeah. Yeah. And never prayerfully, never the twain shall meet if you're lucky. Yeah.
That's a story right there. It needs to be written because I mean, it's just a matter of time. Like my boyfriend and I were talking about, there's this Australian reader who reaches out to writers and basically says, I will give you reviews on Goodreads if you want to send me your books. I'm going to do this no matter what, but I will, give you a heads up, or something that almost sounded blackmailish. But then, my boyfriend was like, reaching out to this person, like, wait, what's going on? Anyway, long story short, they're like very liberal and progressive in Australia, but they're anti-vax and sort of have this anti-science and, oh my God, my friend got killed by the vaccine thing. And it's such a weird combination, like to see things that you normally know are very separate and like polar to start to oddly permutate, but it's just a matter of time,
Yeah.
So I don't know. Well, hopefully not though. I pray you're right. I do want to go back to the chat real quick. We've had a few comments.
Oh, yeah.
Dear friend Matt from Victoria, and thrilled that we're talking, and I am also thrilled. It's only taken us when did Bearded Fruit start? When did your show start?
I mean, honestly, like it's like we moved to Connecticut, so it's like 7 years.
Oh my gosh, because
I think it's a really long time.
I think I messaged you somehow, some way, fairly early after you started, maybe like within the first teens or something episode.
Yeah, like
and so yeah, it's long overdue for sure.
Very much. Yeah.
And then I can never say Anne Samwell. I think I said it right. Horror gay podcast. Now, I don't know that I know of this. Was there a horror, like a gay horror podcast? No.
I mean,
it sounds like something right up your alley.
Yeah, like it's my be my brand. When I'm not Ace Dad, I'm also Horror Dad. So that's
I think he's from a parallel reality, and it's like blending and mixing. And
I'm sure I'm very trenchant there in that parallel. I'm sure I have wonderful trenchant things to say for sure.
It could also be a Tenet thing where it's working backwards through time. So he's like, what is it, inverted or whatever? I just watched Tenet and my mind is still recovering from the time travel shenanigans. But I think this is back from when we were talking about the historical different roles. And yes, I think religion played a huge role in sort of the forced abstinence and or asexuality for a lot of priests and whatnot.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then Dead for Filth. I don't know. Is that the name of the show that you might someday host?
That's a great name for something.
I want to know more about this now.
Yeah.
And we should talk horror, because that's the thing. You and I are very similar. We have a lot of the same kind of geeky influences and all that. But horror is an area for me that I have not delved deeply into. And you have. And in fact, I love the shirt you'll post a lot of times in your Instagram. You'll have your music by John Carpenter, who I will say, I am a synth nut. Like I'm a very modular synthesis is my jam. And the fact that John Carpenter's like does his own scores and it's that deliciously 80s synthy goodness, I also am a fan of his stuff. So tell me about horror for you. Like give me like a first horror moment, like movie or reading or whatever, and like why you sort of went, oh, this is my thing. I love this.
So the first like horror movie that I had like a real strong connection to was Friday the 13th. My uncle was an early adopter of technology, and he was the first person in our family who got a VCR. Ooh. And it was one of those like the monster VCRs with the wood panel on the side that the thing would write the top loader. And one of the first movies that he rented was Friday the 13th, because he was also like, he was a comic book nerd. He is a comic book nerd and like loved horror. And my parents were pretty like loosey goosey about what we could watch and stuff. So they were like, yeah, it's fine. Let the little kid watch the horror movie. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. I mean, you know, like gore and like screaming teenagers, and there was like it was like sex, and I was obsessed. And like, so slashers have always been, especially like cheesy 80s slashers, that's my jam. Halloween is to me the best movie. I'm literally wearing my Halloween
I was
shirt.
about to ask you about your Hawaiian shirt there. That's from Halloween. It's like
That's Halloween. Yeah,
stuff?
that's my Halloween shirt.
Love it.
Like, I love that movie. I'm 100% obsessed with Michael Myers and the whole franchise. Like, I love it.
I got to ask you, since you mentioned that,
Yeah.
I have not seen any of the new movies. I think I saw Halloween H2O, whatever. What do you think? Are you enjoying the new reboot relaunch with what's her name?
Yes.
Or not so much?
I you know, like, any time I get to spend with Michael Myers killing people is good time. That's a good time, and I'm happy. I really liked 2018. I'm not the kind of like super horror fan that hates everything because I love horror so much. I love a horror movie no matter what it is. But it was really well done. It's well acted, it was well written, it was smart. I liked that. I liked the way they took just to be a direct sequel to the first movie over the course of time that it's been since the first movie. Like, I thought it was smart and a lot of fun, and he killed some folks. It was great. I had the best. I can't wait for the next two.
Yeah, I'm
so excited for them.
I was surprised that Jamie Lee Curtis. I was surprised that because I thought she would have been just like done with it. I can't do anymore or whatever. And then she signed on to do like, you know, this new trilogy or whatever. I'm just like, what? This is crazy. I mean, it's so funny because like horror, I think it's the gore. I think for a long time I was not into the visceral disgustingness of gore. There have been movies that I think I enjoyed that were like more spook and jump scare, but didn't get into the bloody, just, you know, the gore.
Yeah.
But I think over time, as I've gotten older, I appreciate the gore as the camp and just over the topness of it. Right. And I realized that, you know, these movies, especially the ones you're mentioning, they're not scary anymore. They might little jump scare moments, but they're really not scary. They're just, yeah. And the formula is fascinating to me too, right? So I mean, as a writer yourself, did you start to, like, as you're reading or you're watching these horror films, did you start to key in on the formula pretty early on? And then have you written anything that kind of took that idea or took the formula, or what are your thoughts on the horror form?
Like, to me, it's comfort food. I love the conventions of especially a slasher. I love the conventions of a slasher. It feels like a nice bowl of chicken noodle soup. It's so warm and comforting to me. There's something there's something that I really love about like the predictability of a well-made story and like the good slasher tropes. It's that, you know, what the beats are going to be, and they come right at the right time. And then you get like the punches too. You get the jokes, and you get the scares, and you get the fake outs, you get all that stuff. And then the final girl triumphs at the end, which is, you know, it's a hopeful ending. I love the way that's part of what I really love about them, and why, like, Neil and I could literally watch a horror movie every night of the week.
Really?
Because it's comforting and lovely. I don't really write. I've like tried to play a little bit of like writing horror fiction, but I'm really bad at it. I'm not good at it. And horror I'm a playwright mostly in my writing life, and the horror in the theater is really tough to do. Like,
I can imagine
hard to
that.
do successfully.
Yeah.
So I don't really do the most I've been able to do. I have a couple plays that you could sort of say are science fiction. And like, those are fun. That's about as close as I can get to like live my genre fantasy in the theater.
I feel like there is an opportunity there to figure out, to crack the horror nut in theater. And if I had to pick anybody I know who could do, I feel like you're the person. I'm just saying, challenge accepted or otherwise, I feel like there's something there. I did see in your CV, you had a play here in Seattle, Right, I think, theater.
Yeah, they did. I can't remember which one it was. It's one of the one acts in I think it was, I want to say it was one of the short acts called There and Back, I think. That was part of it was a one act that was a 10-minute play, I believe.
That's
that was
so
in one of
cool.
the things there. Yeah. Like there are a lot, the short plays. I have a ton of these days. Almost everything in the last, I don't know, 5 years that's been produced of mine, I have not been able to go and see it because it's just everywhere else. Like for the last couple of years, I've been working with a company in the UK that have produced a couple of my shows. So, like I still work as a playwright, but I'm not in the room with them. I wave at them on Zoom, and that's what I can do.
Do they actually, like, when they produce them, do they record them for you to like watch later?
No, and I'm okay. Like I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Recorded theater is, unless you have like the real cool, like the cool Broadway setup, it kind of loses something. So, but like I do get to, it's cool. Like I have this relationship with these companies where I get to, I work with them. We kind of work on the play before it goes up. And especially like in the UK, they do this cool thing. They take shows that I've written that have been produced here in the States, and we work on a UK version where we replace all the slang and rewrite it so that it is situated in the UK where they're performing it, which is a cool process. Like it's a very cool,
like,
process.
Localization for that's cool.
Yeah, so I have like I have 2 plays right now that I have these 2 versions of. There's the UK version and the American version, which is neat. But then they produce them and have a lovely time, and and I get to live my playwriting life vicariously across the pond.
I mean, it's almost, it's in some ways it's got to be not as enjoyable as being there, but like the mystique that you must have to them, like, oh, this American playwright who he's only on Zoom, and when you're on Zoom, you probably have the background and some like special hat or something. You got to play up
the mysterious American playwright who's like just a nerd sitting at home with his dog, like chewing on something. Yeah, that's the cool life that I'm leading. Yeah,
I love, because my boyfriend's a writer, and I love being able to sit here and witness the writing life, and then contrast that to the writing life you see in television and movies.
It's nothing.
It's so night and day different. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't real writers, real adventures out there that the writers are having and sitting in cafes and all this other stuff. But like so many writers are like shut in because they have to just sit and do the work. And if they travel, it's maybe to go to a writer conference, and that's its own special hell. And I know you were working with, was it Hartford? Was it the library at Hartford? Is that, or New London?
Westport? No. Yeah.
Westport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, working in the space of promoting writers, and also like, bringing in writers and kind of dealing with that, what was that like to like experience? Did you find that like rewarding? Did you enjoy finding writers, promoting writers, working with them? Was that all a good, what did you learn from that? And, what do you think I guess, what'd you learn?
Like it was the coolest experience. I was at the Westport Library doing programming for like 3 years, and, we had Westport is a really bougie town in Connecticut. So, we were able, and we're close to New York. We're about an hour from the city. So we were able to really attract some kind of like big name people to the library. So that was like really, really awesome. I got to meet a lot of really amazing writers. And, but the coolest thing that we did, my colleague Alex and I were able to create a literary festival, because that was kind of like what we had resources for there. And we created this festival. Nobody thought we were actually really going to do it, so nobody bothered to pay attention to what we were doing, because they thought there's no way this is actually going to happen. And so we created it was a genre festival, totally speculative fiction. So we created this literary festival with all the writers that we read. So it was like horror and science fiction, fantasy, and like I've gotten to meet like all the writers that are on my shelves. I've gotten to hang out with them at a literary festival, which is the coolest thing. And luckily, even though I'm not at the library anymore, I still get to be a part of the festival. So I'm still getting to hang with I get to fanboy over all my writer friends, which is great. Like it's writers are like all the writers that I would think that I read their books and I'm like, man, what a genius. They're kind of like just regular folks, generally insecure too, and aren't really sure that their book is any good, and they're nerdy too, and they all enjoy each other, and they're lovely to hang around with and have a beer with after the day is done. Like it was the coolest. It was a cool time.
You just reminded me about the new HBO show Mayor of Eastwood with
I haven't seen it.
What's her name? Kate Winslet. She's whatever. There's a writer, actually a creative writing professor in the show that they introduced you to in the first episode. And I haven't gotten much further than that. But it's Guy Pearce, and he plays a writing professor who has like one novel to his credit and it was made into a TV movie. But there's a scene with them at the bar that I think perfectly encapsulated that writer experience, where they're just kind of like, yeah, I wrote a book. Some people liked it. And they made it into a movie. But they're just so like nonchalant about it, down to earth, also self-effacing. I mean, all of that is just, anyway, I'm learning, like I said, a lot more about writing and the writing community. And it's so much of that. So I appreciate your work though. I seeing what you were doing for for Westport there, it was really cool, and like getting people to understand and sort of learn about all these cool works, in addition to getting to meet cool writers. I mean, it's a dream gig, right?
It was pretty great.
So we have another couple comments here. Of course, I forgot Shudder is a big thing these days. I don't know. Do you have a Shudder?
Absolutely. Yeah. Shudder. I love, Shudder should sponsor Ace Dad Advice. No, like Shudder, I think it's a great. It's totally worth it. They have a lot of really cool new stuff, but I really love all the old stuff. Like tonight we were watching. What was the name? What was it? Mortuary. Some like schlocky horror with Bill Paxton in it. From '83 or something. Okay. So it's wonderful curated. These all like weird, rare movies that you don't really see, along with some Italian stuff and foreign stuff and new things. Shudder's great. There's always always something cool to find there.
There was some alien over the top. Oh god, they had like a music video that was really iconic. They had like an inverted cross imagery. That was the only reason I was going to get Shudder, because I wanted to watch this movie. I got to look it up.
Oh, is the French one Blood Machines?
Yes.
That was wild. Yeah.
I watched the one that came out like last year, the year before, was like the sequel to like a short film. And I watched the short film. I think that's on YouTube. And first of all, I love the music. I forgot the composer, but it was really great, synthy, delicious, John Carpenter-esque music. But the imagery was so insane and over the top. So yeah, I really want to watch that. And then I feel like, again, we talked before we started recording, like there's a lot of 80s era schlocky horror that interests me, and I've gotten into some of it because of Media Meltdown. Of course, I've talked about them on the show before, and they do Cinema 420 on Tuesday nights, and they find these gems of weird pop culture forgottenness. Phantom, not Phantom of the Opera, but it was like the movie with Paul Williams from the late 70s, and it was Phantom of the Opera-esque. Was it Phantom of the Theater?
Phantom of the...
Oh my god, I forgot.
Oh, the word's going to completely escape me. No, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, I had never heard of it, seen it, and it was delightful. I mean, schlocky in the best way, and was like, it was a Brian De Palma movie or something. It was like early. Anyway, but that's what I love about finding these gems and these really schlocky, and that's pretty horror-ish, not horror in the tropes and gore, but elements of that. We also have Bill Zanowitz from Comic Book Bears. Hey, Bill. He is got a message for Cody. I saw the Book of D, in Netcong. So I don't know what either of those terms mean. So what it's talking about?
That's so there's a children's theater company in Netcong, New Jersey called The Growing Stage. And they produced my play. I wrote a children's play called The Book of D. There several years ago. It remains maybe one of my top 3 theater experiences of all time. It was the coolest place I've ever been, and everybody who works at The Growing Stage is incredible. I've maintained a relationship with them as a reader for their new works series, just because I love the hell out of those people. And that was it was a very cool experience there. They the set designer for the theater creates everything out of cardboard. He's just like an incredible artist, and he creates all the sets out of cardboard. And that sounds like it may be kind of like they're beautiful. The Book of D was about this kid who was obsessed with Greek mythology, trying to find a friend, and so there are a lot of Greek mythological scenes in the play. And he created this like wonderful, like dreamlike Greek world for the characters to live in out of cardboard. It like spectacular place. One of my favorite places in the world, Growing Stage over in Netcong.
Wow, that's so cool. Like I just as someone who aspires to do more creative and write and do music, having those works like live in that way and be reinterpreted by other people can be, I'm sure, a nightmare, but it also has to be so rewarding just to feel the energy and to see the creativity that you inspire and bring out of others through your work. Like that's got to just be so special.
And especially there, like, you know, it's one thing because I've had a couple shows produced, not sounding braggy, but like I've had a couple shows produced in New York, which is like an awesome experience. But you're also in a room with like New York theater audiences, and so it's all very there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of like anxiety about But at this theater, like you're in this room full of like kids who are coming to the theater, and it's this magical place, and they're laughing and having a wonderful time. It sort of takes all that like adult BS out of the theater equation, and you just sort of see theater again the way a kid does, which is like the most beautiful thing, you know. And then I went to see the show several times, and to have like kids come up and ask me to sign their playbill because they love the show and they wanted to tell me like what their favorite Greek myth was. Man, there's nothing cooler than that.
I love that you get such joy out of your people you connect with and who find your work, both as a playwright and now as the Ace Dad. I mean, as an educator myself, as someone who I always have felt I was like the big brother, I guess, dad, whatever, mentor type. Like there is some of the most amazing moments. And you know, if you're keeping like a hit list in your head of the moments in your life that mattered the most, getting that kind of connection and feedback and knowing that you made a difference, it's got to just be, it's what keeps, I think, a lot of us going and doing more of that kind of stuff. So I'm so thrilled that you're doing all this, and I'm still so jealous that I've got to hang out with your husband and he's delightful, but I haven't got to hang out with you. So hopefully that's going to change soon.
We need to change that. Yeah.
We're going to work on that. But before we wrap up, I got to delve into some pop culture because, you know, Bearded Fruit talks pop culture, Flame On talks pop culture. Yeah. Oh, hold on. Bill's got a good question though. And this is going to be a lengthy one. So I'm going to read it. He's recently written a new play, which is first writing in 20 years. I'm so excited for Bill about this. He said the biggest obstacle he's having is the second draft is making the dialogue authentically reflect the time period of the play, which is the mid-'80s. How do you tackle dialogue issues when you know it could be more aligned with your intent? Oh, it's a great question, Bill.
So two things. One, I actually write out loud. So when I'm writing, I have to, like, Neil has to go into the basement or something because I do the show. I don't put it on the page until it sounds right. You know, like plays are meant to be heard. So you can spend all day kind of typing things out, but unless you can really hear it and make sure that what you're writing actually sounds like something. So I write out loud, which helps me a ton. I mean, I feel like a lot of my work, a lot of my dialogue sounds like the way people actually talk because there's an actual person talking most of the time, just alone in his office. And then as soon as I can, I get it in the hands of actors, even if it's just like hanging at my house or hanging someplace in a very casual read. Just get people to read it, because once you can sort of step away from it and hear other people tackle it, then you can figure out where all those dialogue problems are. Like to me that's the most productive. Those first reads, once it's out of your computer, where you really hear what's happening, then you can solve all the problems. Because it's hard to solve dialogue problems on the computer or on the page in silence. Like it's almost impossible. Well, for me it is anyway.
No, I think you're right. Absolutely. Well, that's great advice.
Yeah.
I'm excited for Bill's project. I know Bill has written some plays in his time and been an actor himself, and I am so excited for what he's doing. He did follow on with he loved Book of D. Which I'm jealous now. I didn't get to see the Book of D, but who knows? Maybe someday we'll find another production company.
I'm writing something new for them right now. It's what I'm working on right now, and hopefully they will dig it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting. Okay, pop culture time. So, I believe, but I don't know. Are you still following Drag Race?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So, how recent are you watching the Drag Race Down Under?
Okay, we've only watched the first episode. We still have one we haven't watched the Snatch Game episode yet.
But, that's okay.
But I've heard.
Hold on real quick. Another fantastic playwright, Dave Abersole. Great advice. I love Dave. Dave is very successfully kickstarted. Is that a verb? I think it is. His new comic series.
Awesome.
Dakota. Oh God, I don't remember the other part of his name, but it's a great queer Western. So I'm very excited. And Dave, I'm sure will comment here quickly, the remainder of Dakota's name. But yes, I'm so glad Dave's on. I love Dave so much. Actually our most recent interview. So yes, Drag Race, you've seen Down Under. Well, let's talk about season 13 then, because season 13, I think the moratorium on season 13 spoilers is off, but just in case, we're going to talk about it. Who is your top four, and then give me your pick for who you wanted to win, and or if it was who won.
So I mean, Simone, Gottmik, and Rose. I was down there. And then like I would have put Olivia Lux in the top four, and
Thank you.
I would have. I
would have too. That was my top four
all season. Yeah, totally. And as like, not saying Simone wasn't wonderful. I thought Simone is an incredible queen, but I was really like, oh come on, Gottmik. There's something about Gottmik that I was just like, man, I just love everything about what they're doing and their aesthetic, and I thought they had an incredible run in the season. So I was really kind of pulling for Gottmik.
We were totally team Gottmik as well, but your top four and my top four are completely aligned. The only one of the top four was like, Candy, really? And then the way they did the finale, I was like, oh, I get it. I understand Rose hurt her foot. It's unfair, whatever. But like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Tommy Dakota, by the way, I did look it up. Dave, I don't want you to be mad at me because I cannot live with my life if you were mad at me. But Tommy Dakota, if you are interested in queer romance, there is a great comic that is, I believe the Kickstarter is still going, although it is 100% funded. We're trying to get the stretch goals. So Tommy Dakota, if you look that up on Kickstarter, you'll find it. So yes, what about Drag Race Down Under? Quick, who are your like standouts for who you're excited about? And if you don't remember their name, I don't know. It probably helps because I mean I don't remember all their names either. So
I really did. I mean, Karen from Finance, I'm so glad she's on the season, but also like totally fierce in the first episode. And I'm 100% there. Anita Wiglet, I'm down. I'm down for Anita Wiglet. I'm having a lot of fun with her. Then there's it's Scarlett Adams. Is that right? Scarlett Adams.
So. Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like that's like going to be the sleeper.
Is she the one that's kind of out of drag? She looks like she's bald, looks like Grant Morrison a bit. I feel like that's her. I gotta double check.
So yeah, but Scarlett, so far I'm really like, I think it's gonna be a really fun season.
Karen is amazing. I love her aesthetic, and I think she is hot out of drag. I think of all of the ones, in the show that we were watching the other night. We watched Snatch Game too, which, oh my God. Yeah, Karen, it was, and just wait till you see who she does for Snatch Game. It's interesting. And Anita's an interesting, I keep saying hate interesting. Anita is a fascinating person out of drag. She reminds me of multiple someones I've known who was a Disney cast member, and that face and that expressiveness of her face, both in and out of drag, is just, it's remarkable. We got some more comments here. Let's see. So Matt was saying, I think the drama isn't in when queens get the chop, but why? I don't know. I don't understand that entirely, but I feel like, yes, I think I do what you're saying. And yes, I totally agree that you're right. Candy as a runner up. Thank you. Oh, James. First of all, let's give it up for James. If you're not a fan of James Figueroa, you should go look him up on Twitter. He is doing some great X-Men sketches, one a day. And even with a brief bout of things that challenged his life, which glad, I'm so happy that he's here with us to be doing more of this fabulous art. He's been cranking these out and they're great. So Candy's a runner-up was so wrong. Agreed. Karen Finance, so good. Yes, of course. And also hello. I'm so happy that you're here. So Drag Race, gosh, what else? There's España. Drag Race España is coming.
Which, I will watch whatever this monolith empire puts in front of me. I will watch. I've literally watched since the very first episode of that first season, and whatever you put in front of me, happy to watch it.
Have you done drag? I forgot if I've asked you this.
I've done drag in the context of doing shows. I played Margaret Mead, the tourist lady, in Hair, and I did Hedwig. I did Hedwig in The Angry Inch.
No,
I was not a pretty Hedwig.
But I think you would have been fantastic. Oh my God. Was this for what how long ago and for what kind of production?
So this was probably 10 years ago, and it was in Louisiana. But we did the whole thing, and full band. We did the show. It was really cool. We did the show in rep with Rocky Horror. So we would alternate nights with a production of Rocky Horror, and just had the most fun. I lost my voice twice during the run of the show because it's so fucking hard. And it was the best time I ever had as an actor, though. It was amazing. I was very East German looking. I was not beautiful in the least.
I think I would, oh my God, I would love to see that. I had just gotten into Hedwig not even that long ago, relatively recently. For some reason I didn't ever watch it, when it had come out and when it was sort of whatever. But yeah, oh my God, I would love to see that. Before we wrap up, I'm trying to think. What are you reading? Anything good? Give me a recommendation for anything that you think is just amazing.
Yeah, so I just finished. I review horror fiction for Library Journal, which is a fun side thing that I get to do. There's a book coming out in I want to say August by Stephen Graham Jones called "My Heart Is a Chainsaw," and it is like a love letter to slasher films. It's wonderful. Go find that book as soon as it comes out. My Heart Is a Chainsaw. It's terrific. And there's a very cool book that comes out in September by Rachel Harrison that I just finished last night called Cackle. It's a contemporary spin on witch lore that is a blast.
That's so cool. I'm very excited for both projects. I realize now that the only horror I've ever read was what's Stephen King's son's name? Brian Hill, I believe. Joe Hill.
Yeah.
I read his Heart-Shaped Box because when
book.
You said heart-shaped like a chainsaw, I'm I read Heart-Shaped Box.
That's such a good book.
Actually really, really, and it was a horror kind of in a certain, again, the creepier, not the schlocky, I should say. Before we wrap, I want to make sure we give all of the credit and all the plugs here. We have your website, so your YouTube, if you go on YouTube and you search for Ace Dad, you're going to find it no problem.
Yep.
I hate the YouTube URLs. I really don't understand why they don't give you the nice little, whatevers, but I feel like you're going to get to that point very soon where you're going to be like, no, I've got a URL and here it is.
Yeah.
But that is your site that takes you to YouTube. It takes you to your Twitter, your all Instagram. And then the TikTok, it's the same problem, right? You don't have a nice URL, or you just look up Ace Dad on
Twitter. Look up I am Ace Dad Advice on TikTok. You can find me there. Yeah, I'm in all those places.
And Bearded Fruit, we have not talked enough about the podcast that is Bearded Fruit, which I'm just going to throw it out there. We have talked about doing a Flame on Bearded Fruit, something or other.
You really should.
And we really should, because I love both of you, and I'm very excited if and when Bearded Fruit, which I believe it will soon, right? I don't know if you set a date, but soon is going to come back.
We are.
I'm so excited.
I
want you and Neil both in my ear holes so bad. It is just
that's oh my god. I'm asexual, Brian. Stop.
Tell Neil. Listen, it'll get Neil excited. I know that.
That it will, yes.
But yes, thank you so much for hanging out for a little bit. And I
my pleasure.
Really hope we can hang out at some point. You have you both have an open invitation to come to Seattle. Basically any day now, once we're all vaccinated. I mean we're almost there here, and soon.
I am fully. Neil has one to go.
That's exactly where we're at. My boyfriend just got his first shot. I'm fully. Yep, we're so close. I can taste it, right? But anyway, thank you again. I really appreciate it, Cody. And again, Cody Daigle-Orians, Ace Dad on all of the video platforms. Please go check him out and recommend and share him to all of the world, so that we can get more people aware of the of asexuality and it's part of the LGBTQIA Rainbow Mafia spectrum.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thanks again.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Yay.